few years back, I did a video about the Seiko 5 SNKM75 and kind of compared it to the Rolex Datejust, which obviously I have no experience with at all because this is a budget watch channel. But that video is my most popular video by a pretty wide margin. And ever since then, I've really been wanting to find sort of a Seiko 5 Rolex Explorer alternative. And it took some hunting, but I think I finally found it. Check it out. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave, and this is a channel all about budget watch collecting. So if you like watches but don't have a lot of money, hit the subscribe button because I'm sure you're gonna find some stuff you're gonna like here. And today we're taking a look at the Seiko 5 SNKM75. Now I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with the Seiko 5 range, but for those of you who aren't, this is kind of Seiko's entry-level automatic watch range. The Seiko 5 line has been going back for I think 30 or 40 years, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different Seiko 5 watches out there. Now in the last few years, Seiko has really started promoting the Seiko 5 Sports line, which is sort of a relaunch of it. Those ones have better movements, a little bit higher specs, a little bit higher prices, but a lot of the classic Seiko 5 watches are still readily available, and they're kind of a different beast. Okay, so before we talk about what makes this watch a Seiko 5 watch, let's look a little bit at why I think this bears some similarities in comparison to the Rolex Explorer. Most obviously on the dial, you're getting large Arabics at 12, 6, and 9, with baton markers at the other indexes. This watch is also very clearly a field watch style design, and it has a case shape and finishing that again feels like it's influenced heavily by Rolex's Oyster cases. You're getting a kind of flat, polished side to the watch, a brushed bezel, and brushed lugs on top. Seiko also chose to include a bracelet that is very reminiscent of the Oyster style bracelets, but it's a Seiko 5 bracelet, so it's folded links, and yeah, if you have arm hair like I do, it's going to tug them, and they're a pain to size. So as usual, I'm going to be tossing the bracelet pretty much as soon as I can. I will show it to you guys here in the review, so if you guys want to look at it, if you're into that kind of thing, but I'm definitely going to be trying this watch on some other straps throughout the review and try and find one that really brings, I think, the character of this watch out. And I think I found something that I think really, yeah, elevate the watch a lot. But even though I feel like this watch really has drawn its influence from the Rolex Explorer, it definitely has a lot of Seiko 5 DNA into it that really kind of adds a twist to this design. You've got a day-date display at 3 o'clock, and you've got a 4 o'clock recessed crown, both of which are hallmarks of the Seiko 5 range. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Seiko 5 line, or unfamiliar with the kind of classic Seiko 5 line, this is Seiko's entry-level automatic line. So the classic Seiko 5 line was characterized by 5 things, which have changed over the years. But some of the things that have really remained consistent and that you definitely find in here is an automatic movement, a day-date complication, and then a 4 o'clock crown that is kind of recessed and tucked away. Additionally, this one has the older 7S26 movement, which is an older movement that does not have hacking or hand winding. So that means if you pull the crown out all the way, the second hand is going to keep spinning around the dial. So you can't set it down to the second very easily. And you also can't hand wind this watch. So if you spin the crown, it's not going to wind it. If the watch has stopped because you haven't been wearing it, you have to pick it up and kind of shake it for about 30 seconds or so to get it going. After that, you put it on your wrist and it'll be good to go. Now, these two features are things that automatic watch lovers tend to really desire in watches. And so for a lot of people, not having those is a bit of a deal breaker. And I was like that for a long time. At this point, it doesn't really bother me anymore. The upside to the 7S26 movement is that it is legendary for being a low maintenance movement that will last forever. I very commonly get people down in the comments telling me that they've had a Seiko 5 watch for 20 years and it's never needed a service. This particular one is actually running fairly accurately as well at only about plus 6.5 seconds a day. And I picked this one up for right around $100. Now, I commonly have 2 problems with the Seiko 5 line. One, they tend to be too small for my wrist. I have a 7.5-inch wrist, and many of their designs are down in the 37mm range, which is smaller than I am kind of comfortable wearing. The other thing is they often use odd-sized lugs. You're commonly going to find like 19mm lugs, which are very difficult to source straps with. However, this one comes in at a nice 39mm width and 20mm lugs. So for me, I feel like that wears really well on my wrist, and it gives a ton of strap options, which are 2 features that I really loved about this particular one. I also really like the handset that they've gone with here. You know, for me, the Mercedes hands on the Rolex is one of my least favorite parts of them. So the fact that this this one didn't copy the Rolex in that area and they went with a unique handset. I actually really like these sort of sword-shaped hands that they've gone here. I think they just have a great look to them. And the other dimensions on this watch are great as well. It's only about 10 millimeters thick, so very slim for an automatic watch. And then a nice compact 45 millimeter lug-to-lug. So this watch is really going to wear well on almost anybody's wrist. The dial comes in a couple of different colors for this particular one. I have this sort of olive green color that's sort of grown on me. If you really want to get something as close to the Rolex Explorer as possible, they do have a black dial one. That one seems to be the hardest one to track down. But they also have kind of a cool white dial one that I did manage to get in and take a quick look at as well. But overall, I really enjoyed wearing this watch. I bought it because of that connection to the Rolex Explorer, but it's sort of moved away from that. I don't really think of this as a Rolex Explorer homage, just as a really great casual everyday watch. And as a field watch in the Seiko 5 line, I think I actually prefer it a lot to the kind of legendary Seiko 5 SNKM75 series. Now let's talk a little bit about strap options for this because again, I hate the Seiko 5 bracelets. Quick overview of the bracelet. It's a brushed bracelet that they give you. It's folded links. It's difficult to size. It pulls your hair, but the clasp is actually pretty good. It's a push button deployant clasp, which is nice, even though it is just a pressed clasp inside. You're only getting 3 micro adjusts on that. So a little bit hard to get a really good size on it. It actually looks surprisingly nice. It's a very nice looking bracelet from the top of it. You know, if you look on the side, you can see that it's folded links, but just comfort wise, I don't prefer to wear it. So the first thing I did was try it out on that solid oyster style bracelet that I got off of AliExpress that I used in the SNKM75 video. And that one fit. So with the SNX, I wound up using the stock end links and then attaching it to the bracelet from AliExpress. In this case, the stock end links and that bracelet have slightly different sizes, so it wasn't a good fit. Instead, what I did is I just used the end links that came with the AliExpress bracelet. So those are hollow end links that can kind of be bent to get a pretty decent fit. And doing that, you know, you definitely kind of get that sort of Rolex Explorer vibe going a little bit heavier. You get a nicer feeling bracelet. It's more comfortable on the wrist. And if that's the style you want, I would say go with that. But that's not actually how I wound up wearing this watch the most. In fact, the strap that I wore it the most with was this kind of distressed brown leather strap from Nomad Watchworks that I picked up. The sort of warm brown tone of that strap really matches well with the kind of olive green of the dial. But this watch also works great on NATOs. So if you want to actually take it out in the field and you want something that's not going to have any problem with sweat or, you know, moisture, that sort of thing, this watch is very light on the wrist because it's so slim. It'll wear very nicely with NATO straps, and so you can kind of play around with those as well. You know, I found a lot of straps that I really enjoy putting this watch on, and that's one of the funnest things about this, is it being a Seiko 5 with 20 millimeter lugs. That's kind of unusual, and it gives you a lot of great options there. Now, one area that was a little bit of a disappointment was the lume, which is a bit unfortunate because even on some of Seiko's lower priced watches like this, you're often going to find some really good lume. In this case, all that they've done is they've given you some small lume pips around the chapter ring, and then they've put a very weak application of lume on the handset. So I actually ran this in a little bit of a lume competition against a new Citizen watch that I picked up, and then also against my Bull of a Lunar Pilot. And as you can see, the hands faded out within about 15 minutes. Which again is kind of surprisingly poor performance from Seiko. Especially with hands that size, they really could have lumed these very brightly. And I have seen, again, some other Seiko 5 watches that have better looms on the handset than this. The lume pips are really bright too, which is, again, kind of surprising because if they can make the lume pips that bright and last as long as they did, they should have been able to do the same with the hands. As it stands, the SNKM75 wound up scoring a 4 on my J-score system. But I'm going to throw an asterisk on that because, again, the hands didn't last anywhere near the full hour that the test is meant to measure. So even though the markers are still pretty visible after an hour, it doesn't really make any difference if you can't see the handset. So yeah, after dark, you'll get maybe about 15 minutes of usage out of this. It's not going to be one of those kind of all night long sort of watches. But there are a lot of nice little kind of finishing touches on the watch. The baton indexes in particular kind of surprised me. They have little facets on it that sort of catch the light in unique ways on the edges. And then the edge of the bezel is actually polished as well. So while most of the top of the watch is brushed, you do get a little bit of reflection from the side of the polished bezel, whereas the top of the bezel is circular brushed. Like a lot of these Seiko 5 watches, I think this is just really a fantastic value and a $100 watch. You get Seiko's legendary build quality and heritage, kind of a unique, quirky, fun little piece. And again, while it draws, I think, a lot of inspiration from the Rolex Explorer, it also, I think, has a lot of character of its own. The only problem with this watch it's going to be hard to find. I saw it pop up on Japanese Amazon. I snagged one. They kind of come and go on there, but I was searching around on US sites and I didn't really see it on very many. So it's something you're probably going to have to do some hunting for if you're really interested in. But that's kind of how it goes with a lot of these Seiko 5s. Again, there's just like hundreds of them out there. And it is kind of a treasure hunt. You're kind of looking around and trying to see which ones pop up, which ones become available, and there's a ton of options. So that's one of the fun things about them. And I'm glad I was able to snag this one. I'm still not 100% sold on the green. I think I would have rather snagged the black when it came up when I had the chance. But I want something a little bit different, a little bit unique, and the green really is growing on me. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Drop me a comment down below. Always love hearing from you. But that will wrap it up for this time, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.